The world of Ice and Fire is incredibly well fleshed out. George R. R. Martin has devoted a massive amount of time, both in world books and history books, and in the main series itself, to making this a living, breathing world in which all of our favorite characters live. However, one element that hasn't been all that fleshed out is holidays in Westeros. You'd be forgiven for not noticing any of them at all. I think only one of them is mentioned in the main series, and two more are mentioned in Fire and Blood. So today I'm going to break down essentially what those holidays are, what they mean to the people of Westeros, and kind of explore why there might not be very much of a focus on holidays in A Song of Ice and Fire. This is a bit of a holiday special episode as I'm recording this in the week leading up to Christmas and in the middle of Hanukkah, so I hope you all have a happy holiday season as today we dive into some of the holiday history of A Song of Ice and Fire. Before we get into the holidays themselves, I want to do a quick refresher on the Faith of the Seven, which is the faith to which all of these holidays belong. It is the primary faith in Westeros. There are some beliefs of the Old Gods and of the Drowned God that remain in the North and the Iron Islands, respectively. However, the Seven are still the main focus of the religious world, essentially, in Westeros. The Seven speaks of a god that has seven faces. It's pretty much an analog to the medieval Catholic Church, and that god has seven faces, as I said, those faces being the Father above, who's a bearded man, often depicted as a judge of sorts, the Mother, or the Mother above, who is loving and protective, the Warrior, which is self-explanatory. It's a spirit of just being able to fight and being able to engage in war. There's the Smith, also self-explanatory, somebody who's able to forge things. The Maiden, which is a beautiful, innocent-looking young woman. The Crone, who is an old, wise woman. And the Stranger, who is a representation of death. We know that each of these gods seem to have a day devoted to them specifically, as all of the holidays we've heard about are these specific days. The first holiday we hear about in Fire and Blood is the Feast Day of Our Father Above. It's a holy day celebrated by the Faith of the Seven, in which Septons think it is the most auspicious day for making judgments. This ties into the image of the Father discussed earlier, that being him as a judge both of character and a literal judge in society, judging who is evil and who is good. We only hear about one instance of this holiday being celebrated, notably during the reign of King Aegon III. This is during Aegon III's regency, when he was too young to rule. Lord Unwin Peake, who was the hand of the king at the time, had the dungeons of the Red Keep emptied and had all offenders published publicly on the feast day of Our Father Above. So it kind of ties into the idea of being a good ruler. The father kind of is a kind of face of that, the idea of rulership and justice, and it does make sense that kings, especially new ones, would take advantage of this holiday in order to do their justice and really make that association between the father and themselves. The next holy day of the seven was also discussed in Fire and Blood. It takes place 3 years later, this specific instance of it, but Smith's Day is another holy day. Most notably, Lady Laura Rhaegar gave birth to Prince Aemon Targaryen on the eve of Smith's Day in 136 AC. Aemon Targaryen is very famous. Jon Snow thinks of him a fair bit, as he's a very famous dragon knight from back during the reign of both his father, Viserys II, the best Targaryen king, as well as his brother, Aegon IV, the Unworthy. This kind of ties into who Aemon is as a person. I think that most people would probably think that, oh, the Warrior is probably the day he was born under because he is such a famous knight. But the Smith has other things in common with Aemon, most notably that the idea of essentially work and trying to maintain something to the best of one's ability, and even trying to create something, can be tied into how Aemon tries to uphold the Targaryen dynasty much more than his brother, Aegon the Unworthy, does. Perhaps to an extent that the son, Daeron the second Targaryen, was actually Aemon's son rather than Aegon's. But that is just a theory. Hopefully we'll get more insight into that in Fire and Blood Volume 2. And hopefully we'll get more holidays in Fire and Blood Volume 2. The final holiday is the one about which we have the most details. Maiden's Day is a holiday in the calendar of the Faith of the Seven, celebrating, as the name would imply, the Maiden. On this day, maidens of noble houses are required to go to the sept and light tall white candles at the maiden's feet and hang parchment garlands about her neck. Anyone else is essentially barred from entering the sept, along with men, and these men who enter the sept sing songs of innocence. It doesn't have a set date during the year, but it does have two specific occasions that we hear about, one in the main series and one in Fire and Blood. In 133 AC, a ball is held in order to allow Aegon III Targaryen to find a new wife after his first betrothed passed away. And in A Feast for Crows, King Tommen tells his mother, Cersei Lannister, that his wife, Margaery Tyrell, has to fast and purify for Maiden's Day. So both of these events we hear about are revolving around marriage, which does make sense given the symbology of the Maiden and its general importance in the society of Westeros as a whole. This is the only holiday that we hear about in the main series of A Song of Ice and Fire, and does lend somewhat to its importance. So why aren't there very many holidays in Westeros? There are two reasons that this could be the case. Firstly, the calendar in Westeros. We don't know very much about the specific calendar. However, we do know that the seasons are extended and magically lengthened. This would make it very hard to do certain holidays, as a lot of holidays are tied to certain times of year in order to celebrate either the coming of a harvest, the coming of winter, the coming of summer, things like that. And the fact that this isn't something that's consistent in Westeros or in Essos would most certainly make it more difficult to schedule any holidays consistently. We do hear about, specifically with Maiden Day, in order to schedule it, it is a variable day during the year. So this does shift due to the changing calendar. So overall, that would make it quite a bit difficult in order to get a consistent schedule for holidays, hence the lack of focus on holidays in A Song of Ice and Fire. What's more, many of the deities in Westeros and in Essos are kind of somber and generally prefer their faith to be held in fear than in celebration. Gods like the Drowned God, the Old God, the Red God, the God of Many Faces. All of these deities essentially are entities to be feared and do hold some concrete power that we have seen the extent of in the series so far. It does make sense that perhaps there are days where this power is more powerful, for lack of a better term. However, it doesn't seem as though their followers openly celebrate them as much as these other faiths. I'm surprised that we haven't seen other kind of festivals and holidays in Essos through Daenerys' point of view, as she has been very in touch with the cultures of Meereen, of Yunkai, of these lands that she's conquered. However, the only holidays we seem to see are tied to the Faith of the Seven, this analog for the Catholic Church in medieval Europe, and kind of the one religion that seems to not have any concrete deeds tied to them, at least supernaturally speaking. However, there are still occasions to celebrate in Westeros. A lot of the time we see tourneys held for name days, for anniversaries, for celebrations of other kinds, like births or somebody becoming a king. And overall, these can be good stand-ins for holidays. And there are a lot of them throughout the story. And I think that a lot of events that have happened at these tournaments are quite interesting and have had a lot of implications for the story, both in the past and in its future. So, this has been the video on holidays in Westeros. What do you think of these holidays? Would you like to see more in the Winds of Winter and in the Dream of Spring? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you're not subscribed already, I'd really appreciate it. At the very least, as a holiday gift, it really helps me grow the channel. And yeah, just like to see it. Thank you all for watching. I hope you have a happy holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays to any holidays you celebrate. Happy Festivus for those who partake. And yeah, thank you all for watching so much. I hope you have a nice holiday season. I'll see you soon.